In today's video, we're going to look at unauthenticated scans by defining them, and then we will see how they're performed in Nessus. Welcome to Siberian Sentry. I'm your host, Cypherjack. This is my vulnerability management series, a series of 3 videos discussing unauthenticated scans, authenticated scans, and disassisted scans. In this video, however, we're focusing simply on the unauthenticated scans. We're going to start by defining them, and then we will show how you would run an unauthenticated scan by using Nessus, and then looking at the report that it would generally generate. Vulnerability scan is where the scanner examines a system without valid login credentials. And so how it works is the scanner connects to the target over the network via HTTP, SMB, SSH. It gathers information available to the public or unauthenticated users, and it detects exposed services, open ports, banners, misconfigurations, and known vulnerabilities. Now we're going to look at some key characteristics of this particular scan. One of the features is that it has no credentials are used. The scanner is blind to internal configurations or software details, meaning like it couldn't even tell you if like a particular software was out of date or needed patching. It's a very external view kind of scan. It simulates what a hacker would see from the internet. And while it is faster, it is less thorough. It can't see internal software versions or hidden services protected behind logins. However, it is good for perimeter testing, useful for testing things like firewalls, web servers, and public facing systems. And I know what you're thinking. Well, wait, public facing, is that the same as internet facing? Well, let's take a look at that. Public facing is a broader term meaning visible or accessible to the general public and can include the following: internet facing apps, customer support portals, company blogs, or social media. It might even include physical services like customer service desks depending on context. And internet facing means a system or service is directly accessible from the public internet. For example, yourdomain.com is internet facing. Now, the security implications on this is high, therefore, it must be hardened, monitored, and patched. Now, even though we're not looking at authenticated scans, I wanted to compare the unauthenticated with authenticated scans to give you kind of a brief idea before we jump into them in the next video. So authenticated scan uses valid credentials, so actually login information, whereas the unauthenticated has no login access whatsoever. And of course, like we mentioned, it's a very limited visibility type of scan, whereas the authenticated will have that deeper system access. Unauthenticated will also find surface level issues, whereas the authenticated will actually find configuration and patch related issues. Now, the unauthenticated is good because it will simulate an external attacker. However, an authenticated will simulate more like an insider threat or a compromised account. And unauthenticated scans, what they use is external, the uses for this is for external vulnerability assessments, penetration testing and preparation, regulatory security testing, and initial reconnaissance. And I know your question, you're going to say, wait a minute, now, isn't an unauthenticated scan really just a ping, albeit a bit more advanced? Well, I'm glad you asked because we're actually going to look at the difference between an unauthenticated scan versus a ping. So let's break that down. We're going to look at some things like purpose, protocol, result, data collected, and security use. A ping, it simply is checking if the host is online, whereas the unauthenticated finds vulnerabilities, open ports, and misconfigs. The ping uses the ICMP or Internet Control Message Protocol, whereas the unauthenticated uses multiple like TCP, UDP, HTTP, so forth and so on. The result, is this device alive? Whereas the unauthenticated is asking questions like what services are running, what's vulnerable. The data collected, well, a ping doesn't really collect anything other than reachability and response time, whereas the unauthenticated can actually provide service banners, OS information, software versions, known CVEs, or as we say, common vulnerabilities and exposures. The security use on this case would be network availability for a ping, and for the unauthenticated were external attack surface analysis. So an illustration I want to provide is a ping is like knocking on someone's door to see if they're home. Whereas an unauthenticated scan is walking around the house or property, peeking through windows, testing the doorknobs, and taking notes without actually going inside. Let's look at a few tools. The tools that you could use to perform an unauthenticated scan is Nmap, Nessus by Tenable, which we'll be using, OpenVAS, and Nikto for web servers. But the TLDR of this particular scan is that it's a scan is much more comprehensive than a ping. It tries to map out and identify potential vulnerabilities from an attacker's perspective without actually logging in. So now what we're going to do is go into Nessus, and I will show you the steps you would take to run an unauthenticated scan, and then we will look at the report it would produce. All right, so here we are. This is Nessus. This is what it would look like once you log in. You'd have these options. Of course, we're in a vulnerability management series, so that's the one we're going to select. And it brings you over to a dashboard that is displaying all sorts of information. I'm not going to go through this. It's not pertinent to what we're trying to do right now. And plus, it's just a lot of information. It would be a lot for you to retain. Uh, Something you would get used to seeing as you used it more on a regular basis. But over here, the sidebar will have options. The one we want is scans, and here it is. And over here is where you would see any scans that you have created or run in the past. Just keep in mind that whatever organization you are working with, they may have it set up in such a way so that anything that's been sitting around for too long that it basically purges it from the system. So really what you want to do is you want to create the scan and then run the scan. After you run the scan, you will then look at the report through Nessus here, and it applies the information of which vulnerabilities that it found, and then it would then have an options for you to select those and kind of find information about those vulnerabilities and how to fix them. And some other information it would provide as well, which we will see when we actually look at a report. At this moment, what I want to show you is how you would create this scan and how you would run this scan for you to be able to have that knowledge, seeing it. Some people are visual learners. Maybe that's why you're watching it. In any case, create a scan and create a scan template are the two options here. We're just going to select create scan. When we come over here, this is where it already has templates that are already made. You have Nessus Scanner. It has all of these templates. Nessus Agent has these templates, and User Defined has these templates. We're going to stick with Nessus Scanner, and we're going to select Basic Network Scan. And then once you're over here, this is where it has the information, uh, about that, basic network scan where you will enter, for instance, we'll start with a title. We're going to call it the ciphertext CJ unauthenticated scan. I'm not going to use any description. You could, though, if you're running different scans and wanted to remind yourself why each scan was run. There's the internal scanner type. This is what we use in the cyber range. Um, so your organization may have something different, but that's what we use. And then the scanner, the actual scanner you're using, again, there's these different ones here, but for our sake, in the range, we use local scan engine 01. Again, you can put tags here, but they're not necessary. Targets, now we need a target. We need something to scan, right? So if we come over here to Microsoft Azure, this is the opening screen. When you log in here, there's different options here in your services. We're going to focus on virtual machines. And these are the three that are listed here. Depending where you work or where you volunteer, you might see more than just three. But in this case, ciphertext CJ. I come over here. I'm going to grab the public IP address, go back over, and paste that in. And that's not all, though. Oh, that's it. It's that simple. Well, it is simple, but we're going to look at one other thing, and that's discovery. And when you come over here, scan type, well, there's port scan, which is the common ports. There's port scan, all ports, and then there's a custom. So we're going to select custom. And then you'll notice right away the top one is host discovery, ping the remote host. So remember earlier in my video, I mentioned, I discussed the differences between a ping and an unauthenticated scan. Well, in this case, the unauthenticated scan is also running a ping. It's going to knock on the door, see if anybody's home, and then it's going to begin, searching the perimeter, looking for a way in, and let you know if it can find any. Then there's the use fast network discovery. We are going to select that on as well. Let me read the description so you understand why. If a host responds to ping, Nessus attempts to avoid false positives, performing additional tests to verify the response did not come from a proxy or load balancer. Fast network discovery bypasses those additional tests. And if you have that off, it could create problems in your scan on this particular one that I'm going to run. So that's all we do. It's save it. And then once you go back to the screen, you will now see your unauthenticated scan ready to go. It says status empty, meaning there's nothing in this report. It's simple. The little bell says, hey, your scan was saved successfully. It would come over to the ellipsis and we would click launch. Now I'm not going to do that because I've already run the scan, and now we're going to go ahead and jump ahead and look at what that scan is. All right, so as you can see, the scan was run. It's now completed. If we click on this, it brings up a quick synopsis of that you have vulnerabilities by severity. So there's critical, high, medium, low. And so if you're like, well, it's not showing me what vulnerabilities there are. Well, actually, yeah, see all details, click that. And now it brings up this report. Now you can export this report, as I mentioned previously, to PDF, for instance, and keep that for your logs. But the reason you want to just look at this and observe it is because it has a few things that that PDF won't have. So when you look at this report and it says we have 6 medium vulnerabilities. So in this case, we have mediums here, then followed by the 1 low. There's no critical, there's no high vulnerabilities, which is nice. And as you can see, it's the first 3 have to do with SSL, then there's an SMB, then there's TLS. The low is the ICMP, sorry. So let's say you were like, well, what does it mean? Certificate cannot be trusted. So you click on that, and it actually brings up a description. The server's X.509 certificate cannot be trusted. The situation can occur in 3 different ways in which the chain of trust can be broken as stated below. So it gives these first, second, and third, some additional things at the end there. But let's say you want to jump right to the solution, like, okay, I'm creating a report. We need to remediate this. How would we go about it? And the solution is purchase or generate a proper SSL certificate for this service. And then it says see also, and it gives you some links you can go to that explain that further. So let's take a look at another one though. Let's say the TLS, say deprecated protocol, saying, hey, the remote service accepts connections encrypted using TLS 1.1. And this particular version lacks support for current and recommended cipher suites. Ciphers that support encryption before MAC computation and authenticated encryption modes such as GCM cannot be trusted with TLS 1.1. And it goes back as far as March 31st of 2020. It says the solution is to enable support for TLS 1.2 and or 1.3 and disable support for TLS 1.1. So you would put that in your report for the server team, for example, if they're doing the remediating on this. And again, some more information if you need it to investigate it further. And so, yeah, so that's basically what a report would look like. And then again, you could export it to a PDF, save it for your logs and reports. Once you have done all your research on how to remediate it, you know, okay, I don't need this anymore. I can go ahead and get rid of it. I now have the PDF version as well as all my notes. And so you would put that together and send it over to the server team, and you're good to go. Go back to scans here. And again, it shows as one of your recent completed scans. So that in a nutshell is all the information you would need to know about an unauthenticated scan, at least at a fundamental level. I'll try to do a little more than that. And so, yeah, that's it. That's all for today's video. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell if you want notifications of future content. This is Cypher Jack signing off.